Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling Islamic jurisprudence, specifically these two fascinating concepts, Maslahah Mursalah and Dalil.
Yeah, these ideas are really key to understanding how Islamic law can adapt in our modern world.
Especially things like finance and economics, right?
Exactly.
So if you've ever, wondered how these centuries-old texts can speak to things like, I don't know, cryptocurrency or gene editing,
You're in the right place.
this is it.
We're going to be uncovering, really, how Islamic law stays true to its roots while addressing things that people couldn't have even imagined, like centuries ago.
So let's kick things off with Maslahah Mursalah. This is all about public interest, but in a very specific way. It's kind of like a legal tool almost that comes in when the Quran and the Sunnah, those primary sources of Islamic law,
Right.
when they don't offer a clear answer to a modern problem.
Yeah, like imagine the debate over Bitcoin a few years back.
Oh.
Some scholars were saying it was totally forbidden, because it's volatile. There's potential for speculation. But then others were looking at it and saying, well, wait, there's potential for financial inclusion here. And argued that, it aligns with Islamic principles about trade, about entrepreneurship.
So that's where Maslahah Mursalah comes in.
Exactly. It provided, the framework for this whole debate.
Okay, so it prompts scholars to kind of weigh these potential benefits against any possible downsides?
Yeah, the harms to society.
So hold on. It's not just a free-for-all. Anyone can just say, oh, this is in the public interest, and make a ruling.
No. There are very specific conditions that have to be met.
Okay, what kind of conditions?
The benefit, first of all, it's got to be real, and it has to be widespread.
Not just benefiting like a small group.
Exactly. And it can't contradict any, firmly established Islamic principles.
Makes sense.
And some scholars even say it has to be rational. Like any reasonable person would agree it's a good thing, and it has to actually alleviate hardship.
That makes sense. But it sounds like there's still room for debate.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most, I think, fascinating things about Islamic jurisprudence. It embraces these kinds of, intellectual debates.
Mm-hmm.
Not all scholars agree on how far Maslahah Mursalah can go.
I see.
Some say, look, the Quran and Sunnah, that's enough. We shouldn't go beyond them.
Right.
Others say, no, Islam is a living tradition. It can adapt to these new realities while, staying true to its core values.
So it's this, tension between tradition and change. Seems like that's at the heart of a lot of these discussions.
Absolutely. And that tension is what keeps Islamic law dynamic, relevant to people's lives today.
It's not just about clinging to the past, right? It's about finding ways to apply that wisdom to the challenges we face today. This makes me think of something I read recently about organ transplantation. It's, a life-saving procedure, but obviously there are a lot of ethical and religious considerations.
That's a great example. Maslahah Mursalah comes right into play there.
Yeah.
Islamic scholars have used this principle to argue that organ transplantation can be permissible, even encouraged, if it saves lives and it lessens suffering.
But that doesn't mean it's a simple yes or no, right?
No, of course not. They've also developed guidelines for organ donation and allocation, making sure they're in line with Islamic principles, like informed consent, making sure there's equitable access.
So Maslahah Mursalah helps us navigate those tricky ethical gray areas, those places where there isn't an easy answer in the traditional texts.
Exactly. It gives us a framework for making good decisions in a world that's constantly changing.
And it makes sure Islamic law isn't just some, set of rules, but a living, breathing guide.
That's a great way to put it.
Now that we've seen how Maslahah Mursalah helps us with new issues.
Let's look at Dalil.
Okay, so if Maslahah Mursalah is about, what to do in uncharted territory, is Dalil about how we understand those Islamic texts that we already have?
You got it. It's all about evidence.
Evidence.
Think of it like a detective's toolkit, for understanding Islamic texts.
Okay.
Just like a detective uses fingerprints and DNA evidence, eyewitness accounts.
Right.
Islamic scholars use all kinds of sources to figure out legal rulings.
So it's not just about, picking up the Quran and saying, this is what it means.
Oh, definitely not. It's much more nuanced than that.
Oh, okay, so walk me through it.
Well, you have the Quran, of course, but then you also have the Sunnah. Those are the Prophet Muhammad's teachings and practices. And then there's Ijma.
Ijma.
That's the consensus of Islamic scholars.
Okay.
And then there's Qiyas.
Qiyas.
That's analogical reasoning.
So each of these is like a different piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Like different types of evidence a detective would use.
You got it. And just like a good detective knows that not all evidence is created equal, well, not all Dalil is equal either.
Hmm.
Some types are more definitive, like a clear statement right in the Quran.
I see.
Other types, like an analogy you draw from a hadith, those might be open to more interpretation.
So I'm starting to see how this can get, like, really complex.
It definitely can,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you think about all the layers of meaning within the text themselves. Think about it like peeling an onion, right?
Okay.
On the surface, you've got what the words literally say. But underneath that,
There's more.
there can be alluded meanings, inferred meanings, even things that are required by the text, but not directly stated.
Wow. So it's not just about what the text says, but about what it implies, what scholars throughout history have understood it to mean.
Exactly. It's a really rich intellectual tradition. Careful analysis, rigorous debate, and this deep respect for the sources of Islamic knowledge.
So how does this all play out in the real world? Say a new financial product comes along. How would Dalil be used to decide if it's permissible?
Okay, let's imagine a new type of Islamic investment fund is created.
Right.
First, scholars would look for any rulings in the Quran or Sunnah about investments or financial transactions, anything explicit.
Right.
Then, they'd consider any relevant scholarly consensus, that's built up over the centuries, and they might use analogical reasoning to compare this new fund to other financial instruments that are already considered okay.
So they're looking for clues and precedents.
Exactly. And how strong and clear that dalil is would play a huge role in their final ruling.
Like building a legal case. Each piece of evidence adds to the argument.
That's a great way to think about it.
This is starting to make sense. So Maslahah Mursalah helps us figure out what to do in these new situations, and then Dalil gives us the tools to analyze them.
You've got it. And when you put those two concepts together, well, you have a really powerful system for making sure Islamic law stays relevant.
And adaptable.
Exactly. To all the complexities of modern life.
It's amazing how it manages to balance tradition and innovation.
It really is. It's a testament to how flexible and intellectually deep this legal tradition is.
It's not about rejecting the modern world, right? But not blindly imitating it either.
Exactly. It's about engaging with it critically, thoughtfully, ethically.
You mentioned before that not all scholars agree on, how far Maslahah Mursalah can go. Do these debates ever get, I don't know, heated?
Oh, there were definitely some passionate disagreements.
Yeah.
But Islamic scholarly tradition really emphasizes respect, decorum, even when there are strong differences of opinion.
So no throwing books at each other.
Huh. No, nothing like that. It's more about presenting your evidence, making a logical argument, engaging in a respectful exchange of ideas.
That's refreshing compared to some of the debates you see on TV or online.
Absolutely. The goal isn't to win, It's about finding the truth, refining our understanding of Islamic principles.
So even disagreement can be a source of learning.
Exactly. It makes us examine our assumptions, look at different viewpoints.
Yeah.
It deepens our knowledge, and in the end, it helps make sure that Islamic law stays dynamic, keeps evolving.
We've been talking about how scholars use these concepts, but I'm wondering, can regular Muslims apply Maslahah Mursalah and Dalil in their own lives?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in a sense, every Muslim is a jurist in their own right. They're making decisions every day informed by their understanding of Islamic principles.
So it's not just for, the scholars and experts.
Not at all. Say you're facing a tough decision about a business deal.
Mm.
You could use the ideas behind Maslahah Mursalah to weigh the good and the bad.
Look at the impact it would have on your family, your community, your own well-being.
Exactly.
And I guess we could use Dalil to see what Islamic teachings say about honesty in business, being fair in our dealings, earning a halal living.
Exactly. Look to the Quran and the Sunnah, talk to knowledgeable scholars. You can even have thoughtful discussions with other Muslims going through the same things.
It's like we have this incredible toolkit, right? And we can use it to make smarter choices, live more ethically, navigate this whole complex world with more, clarity and confidence.
That's a great way to put it. Islamic jurisprudence isn't just some abstract set of rules. It's a living tradition that empowers us, helps us make sense of the world and live according to our values.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I'm really seeing Islamic law in a whole new light. It's not just what you can and can't do. It's about a deeper process of thinking through things ethically.
And that process is something every Muslim can engage in. It's a journey of discovery, reflection, learning.
This has really got my wheels turning. Do you think this framework could help non-Muslims too? I mean, everyone runs into ethical dilemmas, whatever their faith.
That's a really interesting thought. And I think in many ways, yes, the ideas behind Maslahah Mursalah.
Considering the greater good, weighing benefits and harms, working towards justice.
Exactly. Those resonate with people of all faiths, all backgrounds.
Like a universal language of ethics.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And while dalil is rooted in Islamic sources, the idea of using evidence and reasoning to make decisions.
Well, that applies to any ethical system.
Right.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. I feel like I could just keep asking questions for hours.
Me too. This is a topic I could talk about all day, but it's important to remember that this is just the beginning.
The beginning? What do you mean?
We've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to uncover, so many nuances to explore.
Giving us different perspectives.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
Well, the journey of learning about Islamic jurisprudence, it really never ends. It's a lifelong process of studying, reflecting, engaging.
Yeah, I'm realizing that these concepts, Maslahah Mursalah and dalil, they're not just academic terms. They're tools,
Yeah.
We can use them to make sense of our world, deal with ethical challenges, live more meaningful lives.
I think that's a great way to put it. Islamic jurisprudence isn't just a bunch of rules. It's about developing a way of thinking, a way of approaching these difficult questions with wisdom, compassion, a real commitment to justice.
You've definitely given me a lot to think about today. So what's one question you'd leave our listeners with? Something that could spark their own deep dive into Islamic jurisprudence.
Okay, how about this? We've talked about how Maslahah Mursalah helps us with issues that aren't directly in those traditional texts.
Great.
But what happens when Maslahah Mursalah itself?
Yeah.
What if that leads to different interpretations?
Ah, interesting.
How do we know which interpretation is best, most valid, most beneficial? Which one really lines up with the spirit of Islam?
Wow, that's a great question. It's like the ultimate meta challenge. It's not just about using the tools, it's about going deeper, thinking harder.
Exactly. It reminds us that Islamic jurisprudence is alive, it's breathing, it's not static, it's constantly being interpreted and reinterpreted. And that process, even with all its complexities, that's what makes it so fascinating.
Well, on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive.
It's been great taking this intellectual journey with all of you.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring these ideas with us. And remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Keep asking those questions. Keep digging deeper. Keep diving into the fascinating world of Islamic jurisprudence.
It really is.
It makes you realize there are so many different ways to approach these questions.
Right, and that diversity of thought. That's part of what makes Islamic jurisprudence so rich.
So thinking about everything we've discussed, what's the one key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that Islamic law. It's not about blind obedience. It's about understanding. It's about using your intellect, your reason, your heart to engage with these sources, these principles, and then apply them to the challenges we face.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Absolutely. Between tradition and progress, individual understanding, and community guidance.
It's a conversation that never really ends.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Maslahah Mursalah and dalil. I hope you've all enjoyed exploring these concepts with us. And remember, keep those questions coming, keep learning, keep reflecting, and keep diving deeper into the world of Islamic jurisprudence.